Recently, I've gotten a couple of similar messages. I'm gonna read one to you. Hi, Miki. I'm a nurse. I have a stable job and I make a healthy income. That's amazing. But when I get my paycheck, I don't know what to do with it and I end up spending more than I should. What's the right routine after getting paid? I'm gonna walk you through step by step in order the places that your paycheck should be going before you are doing discretionary spending. I would say there are two main types of people who pay and invest in themselves first, and people who use what's left over to pay and invest in themselves. When you see your money hit your bank account, the first thing you need to do is pay yourself first. That means contributing to your emergency fund, your retirement account, 401k, Roth, investments. All of those should be coming before the lifestyle upgrades. Now in the US, there are two main ways that you pay taxes. If you're on a W-2 and you are withholding correctly, then this already pays the majority, if not all of your taxes, your Social Security, Medicare, etc. If you're on a 1099, you need to immediately set aside 30 to 40% of your income. Put this in a high yield savings account because this is what you're gonna use to pay taxes at the end of the year. This can be done annually or quarterly depending on what kind of system you have set up. To make this video a little easier to understand, we're gonna have an example nurse. We're gonna name her Jane. She's gonna make $100K a year on W-2, and for the purpose of this video, she's going to make all the best choices. Step 1, we're gonna pay our minimum obligations. She's withholding correctly and all of her taxes are deducted before it hits her bank account. If she's making $100K a year, after taxes and all the things that need to be deducted, she's probably taking home roughly $5,000 a month. Now, other than taxes, the other obligations are minimum payments on debts. This can be credit cards, car loans, student loans. If you do not pay at least the minimum payment, your credit score will go down, so it's very important that this is the first priority. Jane has $300 in minimum payments, leaving her with $4,700 for the month. Now, the logical next step would be to pay for necessities, right? That includes things like housing, transportation, food, with housing typically being the biggest cost. If you live in America, then you've probably heard this rule thrown around where people say, oh, your rent should be about 30% of your gross income. I do not agree with this rule. I do not like it, and I'm gonna tell you why. If you are trying to prioritize your retirement and your long-term wealth, 30% is usually way too high of a percentage to be contributing to your rent. Instead, I like to ask myself, what kind of lifestyle can I afford after I've contributed to prioritizing my retirement and my future? So before I determine how much I even have to spend on the necessities, I'm gonna do some really quick math. We're gonna assume that Jane is going to max out her 401k at work and also her Roth IRA. These are two priority retirement accounts. I promise I'll explain all of that in depth later. The 2026 max for the 401k is $24,500 and the Roth IRA max is $7,500. If you are 50 or above, you do have slightly higher contribution limits to these. So taking both of these numbers and dividing by 12, that means monthly you need $2,042 for your 401k and $625 for your Roth IRA. So if we take $4,700 and subtract these two numbers, it gives us $2,033. That means that this amount of money needs to cover Jane's rent, utilities, emergency fund, any other necessities, food, discretionary spending, and her investments. Now, Jane was smart and she decided to get a housemate, so she spends $1,000 on rent, $400 on utilities, food, and essentials, which means that her necessities add up to about $1,400. Jumping back again, remember we started with $5,000 post-tax, $300 of that went to paying debt, $1,400 is now going towards necessities, leaving us with $3,300 for the month. Step 3 is your emergency fund. Especially in this climate, in this economy where things are extremely unstable, you really want to make sure that you have a cash buffer if anything changes. If you don't like your job anymore and you want to quit, you need to move somewhere, you need to buy a new car. There's so many situations in life where if you have a cushion, things are a lot easier. Now, Jane has most of her emergency fund, but she still needs a little bit left. She's going to contribute $300, leaving her with $3,000 left. Step 4 is to contribute to your retirement. This is the part where people start to get really confused, and I used to feel the same way. There's so many different names for all sorts of different plans. They're on different platforms. I feel like they intentionally make it very difficult for people to understand. The first thing we're going to talk about is a 401k. If you're employed, you should have a employer-sponsored 401k. Typically, when they have these retirement accounts, there's what's called an employer's match, which means that based on how much you contribute, your employer can match that amount up to a certain percent or up to a certain dollar. At a minimum, you need to be contributing contributing enough money to max out your employer match. For example, your employer may have a dollar for dollar match up to X%. So if they're offering a 100% match up to 3% of your salary, so when you contribute 3%, they also contribute 3%, which means that you get 6% total. Another type is what's called a partial match. For example, the employer can say, we will do 50% match up to 6%. So if you contribute 6%, then they will contribute 3%, which makes it a total of 9%. Again, at a minimum, you need to contribute enough so that you are maximizing your employer match, because that is free money that should be yours. Once you've done that, if you have any high interest rate debt upwards of 10, 15% or more, this is the point where you would want to stop and pay your high interest debt first. A really common one is credit card debt. The percentages are usually extremely high, so you want to pay that off first before contributing more to your retirement. But on a higher level, if you have the ability to, the best thing that you can do is max out your 401k. Your 401k is what's called pre-tax. That means that you do not pay tax on it when you put it in, but when you're 59 and a half or 60 or 65 and you take the money out, you do have to pay taxes on that. Every year, the IRS releases guidelines on the maximum amount you can contribute as an employee. For 2026, it is $24,500 for your 401k. And I know we briefly mentioned the math earlier, but this pans out to be $2,042 a month. So after her retirement account, she has $958 left. Your next priority after a 401k is going to be what's called a Roth IRA. Unlike a 401k, this is post-tax dollars, but it also means that your investments grow tax-free, and when you take out this money, you do not have to pay taxes on it. That is a very big deal because compounded over 20, 30, 40 years, it's going to grow a lot of money. Now, in order to be eligible to contribute to a 401k, there are income limits. It's $153K if you're single and $242K if you're married filing jointly. However, if you make more than this amount of money, you actually still can contribute to your Roth IRA through what's called a backdoor Roth. I know it sounds rather complicated, but it's actually very simple. What it entails is first contributing money to a traditional IRA. That money will go into a settlement fund, and then you will convert that IRA to a Roth IRA. Again, I know it sounds really complicated, but it's literally just pressing a couple of buttons. Some employers do have Roth plans that you can contribute to. Other times you just have to open your own account. I would recommend using whatever platform your other retirement accounts are on so that you can see everything in the same place. My work uses Vanguard, and then I went ahead and opened my own Vanguard Roth IRA as well. Now, the maximum contribution for 2026, if you are under 50 years old, is $7,500. Doing the math for you, assuming you're maxing it out, it's $625 a month. She had $958 left. We're gonna subtract another $625, and that leaves us with $333. Okay, now we're at the fun step, because at this point, all of your essential bills have been paid for, your future and your retirement have been accounted for, your emergency fund is growing. What should Jane do with this remaining $333? Step 5 is discretionary spending and extra investing. Now, this of course can go towards travel, fun spending, buying things that she likes, or she can take this money and do additional investing. This is the point in which people would consider investing in stocks and ETFs. I personally am a lazy investor, and so what I like to do is buy what's called an index fund. You can think about this like a big basket of stocks. So I like to track the S&P 500, which are the 500 most successful companies in the US. So rather than doing a ton of research and picking individual stocks, I'm buying the whole basket. I'm a strong believer that time in the market beats timing the market. The idea is always that you want to buy as low as you can and sell as high as you can, but there's no way to know for certain exactly when it's going to be low or high. And the data shows that you will be more successful when you make continual recurring investments rather than trying to wait to time the market. Now, if you're wondering what platforms to use for automatic investments, I personally, like I said, love using Vanguard. The other one I use is Robinhood. I really like Robinhood because it's really easily accessible on your phone. It's an app, so it's something that you can check really regularly and easily. If you've made it to the step, congratulations, it is no small feat. Even early on in my career, when I wasn't making as much money and when I didn't have a ton saved up, I always prioritize investing in myself first. Because if I do the math to figure out exactly how much I need to max out my retirement accounts and any investments that I'm interested in, then I can take that number and see what's actually left over for me to live. Because it's really easy to fall victim to lifestyle creep, to compare yourself to other people, and end up spending more than you need to on things like rent. And think about it, rent money is money that you never get back. I would much rather live in a smaller apartment for a couple of years and hunker down and really make sure that I get my savings intact. I'm still prioritizing my retirement. In some ways, I think, yes, you are sacrificing today in hopes of a better tomorrow, but I try not to think about it in a way where it's negatively affecting my life. I think about it more so like a game. You have to earn enough coins before you can upgrade to the next house and then a bigger house or a nicer stove. The game of life is kind of similar, and you just have to do some math to make sure that you're ready for the next step. I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget your 10 out of 10. Don't let anyone ever make you feel otherwise, and I will see you guys in the next one.